embark on a fascinating journey that will challenge your most deeply held notions about freedom and personal responsibility. Is our life the result of conscious, autonomous decisions, or are we intrinsically programmed by forces beyond our control? Robert Sapolsky's book Determined invites us to explore a revolutionary perspective, that of a life without free will. This summary will guide you through his most impactful ideas, breaking down each chapter so you can understand not only the scientific arguments, but also how these revelations could transform the way you perceive yourself and the world around you. Prepare for a paradigm shift. In each section, you will find not only the essence of Sapolsky's thinking, but also practical recommendations for integrating these powerful ideas into your daily life. This summary will consist of 7 chapters, each breaking down a crucial facet of Sapolsky's argument and offering a perspective applicable to your life. Chapter 1. The Dilemma of Free Will. Sapolsky begins his discussion by presenting the central dilemma of free will. Are our actions the result of a genuine choice, or are they the inevitable product of a chain of causes and effects that extend back to the beginning of time? The author immerses us in a profound reflection where physics, biology, chemistry, and neuroscience converge to suggest that the idea of an autonomously deciding self could be an illusion. He asks us to consider that, just as an asteroid follows a trajectory predefined by the laws of physics, our own decisions could similarly be determined by a complex web of genetic, environmental, and experiential factors. He considers the example of a criminal who commits a crime, instead of simply attributing the action to a bad choice. He invites us to trace the possible influences: a traumatic childhood, genetic predispositions to aggression, neurochemical imbalances, a precarious socioeconomic environment. Each of these factors, acting together, could have led that individual down a path that, from a deterministic perspective, was the only possible one. Based on this, we leave you with questions for your personal reflection. Do you believe that all your actions are the result of a free and unrestricted choice? Do you believe you have been subjected to influences beyond your control? Do you think reflecting on these questions will help you make better decisions? Keeping in mind the thesis of this chapter, how could you if you are already deterministic? Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of No Choice. In this chapter, Sapolsky takes us inside the brain, exploring how neuroscience challenges the idea of free will. He argues that our decisions are not born from a ghost in the machine, but from the intricate interplay of neurons, hormones, and brain circuits that have been shaped by our genetics and experiences. From the activation of the prefrontal cortex to the influence of the limbic system, every neural process is governed by biochemical and physical laws. In other words, the brain, like any other organ, operates under deterministic principles. Consider the process of making the decision to eat a piece of cake. Sapolsky would argue that this decision is not an act of pure will, but the result of hunger signals sent by the hypothalamus, the release of dopamine associated with pleasure, memories of previous experiences with cake, and perhaps even blood glucose levels. All of this, combined with your genetic history and neural patterns, determines whether you put the piece in your mouth. These ideas lead us to become aware of our impulses and decisions, as they may largely be the product of complex neurobiological processes that operate beyond our immediate conscious control. Chapter 3. The Indelible Past. Genetics and Experience. Here, Sapolsky delves into how our genetics and early experiences profoundly shape who we are and how we act. He argues that we are not blank slates at birth. Our genetic predispositions can influence our temperament, our susceptibility to certain diseases, and even our behavioral tendencies. Added to this are the formative experiences of childhood and adolescence, which shape our neural pathways and emotional responses in ways that can be difficult to reverse. If a child grows up in an environment of constant stress and deprivation, their brain circuits related to fear and anxiety may develop in a way that makes them more likely to react aggressively or suffer from mental health disorders in adulthood. Sapolsky wouldn't say that this individual chose to develop these traits, but rather that genetic and environmental circumstances led to that brain configuration, and therefore those responses. These ideas invite us to reflect on how our genetics and experiences have shaped our thinking and behavior patterns, fostering empathy toward ourselves and others. Chapter 4. Context is Everything. Environment and Culture. This chapter expands the discussion to the influence of environment and culture. Sapolsky argues that the immediate context and social norms we follow are determining factors in our actions. Our decisions, far from being isolated acts of will, are intrinsically linked to the social, economic, and cultural circumstances that surround us. Poverty, discrimination, resource availability, and social expectations act as powerful forces directing our behaviors. An individual living in a neighborhood with high crime rates and few educational opportunities may be more likely to engage in illicit activities than someone from a privileged background. Sapolsky would point out that it is not a free choice in the traditional sense, but rather an adaptive response to a set of environmental pressures that drastically limit perceived options. According to these ideas, you should reflect on your environment and the culture in which you operate to determine how much they influence your perceptions and decisions. Recognizing the weight of context on your actions. Chapter 5. The Illusion of the Controlled Self. Sapolsky addresses the subjective sense of control we all experience, arguing that it is an illusion. Although we feel we are making conscious decisions, the author suggests that this feeling is a post facto brain construct, a narrative we create to make sense of what has already been determined by underlying processes. The idea of a self freely controlling the body is, for Sapolsky, a fallacy. When you raise your hand to shake hands, for example, you feel like you decided to do so. However, the chain of neural events that led to that movement began long before you had the conscious sensation of deciding. The feeling of control is the result, not the cause, of action. These ideas invite us to consider the truth of our sense of absolute control over our actions and thoughts, allowing for greater acceptance of the mind's automatic processes. Chapter 6. Implications of a life without free will. This is a crucial chapter, where Sapolsky explores the profound implications of accepting the lack of free will. If our actions are determined, what about morality, responsibility, punishment, and reward? Sapolsky advocates a radical shift in how we think about justice and suffering. Instead of blaming or praising, we should focus on understanding the underlying causes of behavior and implementing science-based solutions to improve society. This does not mean that there are no consequences for actions, but rather that the basis for those consequences shifts from moral blame to behavior management. Instead of punishing an offender with the goal of making him pay for his supposedly free choice, Sapolsky would suggest we focus on rehabilitation. Understanding the factors that led him to commit the crime, such as trauma, addiction, or deprivation, and implementing programs that address those causes. The idea is not to forgive, but to understand and prevent future incidents. This chapter invites us to reflect on our conceptions of guilt, its punishment, and responsibility, seeking more comprehensive approaches based on prevention and rehabilitation. Chapter 7. Navigating Life with Determinism. Finally, Sapolsky offers us guidance on how to live meaningfully and ethically in a world without free will. Far from promoting fatalism or apathy, the author argues that accepting determinism can unleash our compassion, reduce judgment, and foster greater humility. It allows us to focus on influencing the causes of problems rather than blaming individuals. It also encourages us to appreciate the beauty and complexity of the universe, recognizing that we are part of an interconnected whole. If a friend disappoints you, instead of feeling angry and attributing their actions to a poor choice, you could try to understand the circumstances that led them to act that way: stress, personal problems, or misunderstandings. This perspective doesn't mean excusing behavior, but rather responding with more empathy and seeking constructive solutions. Based on what has been expressed in this chapter, you should consider adopting a more compassionate and less judgmental perspective toward yourself and others, focusing on understanding the causes of behavior and seeking constructive solutions. In conclusion, Robert Sapolsky has invited us to look beyond our most comfortable assumptions, offering us a worldview that, although challenging, is deeply liberating. By understanding that we are the product of the myriad forces that precede and surround us, we do not lose our humanity, but rather deepen it. We gain a greater capacity for compassion, humility, and effectiveness in the pursuit of a better world. This book is not an invitation to passivity, but a call to informed action, to build a more just and empathetic society, where understanding replaces judgment and prevention replaces retribution. Dare to explore this new perspective and discover the surprising strength hidden in accepting our intricate connection to the universe. If you found these ideas interesting, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. If you're free to do so or not, of course.